So we've been talking about the PlayStation 5 shortage for a while when it comes to scalpers and resellers, and when will there be stock readily available when we walk into the different stores. And AMD has gone on record saying they're looking at like second half of this year. Microsoft seems to think by maybe April, and Sony's just looking to try to get out at least 14 million PS5 systems in their next fiscal year. However, there has been an update here that isn't looking great, I'm going to say, for 2021. And that's not necessarily just for the PS5. This will also affect the Xbox and the Nintendo Switch. I know the PS5 is like the most popular product right now when it comes to trying to find it online and then reselling it and all of this. But this is going to be something that's basically going to affect all game consoles across the board. And we're going to talk about that one here today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Small Life Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So let's go over here. This is Bloomberg, where they do say industry executives also blame excessive stockpiling, which began over the summer when Huawei Technologies, a major smartphone and networking gear maker, began hoarding components to ensure its survival from crippling U.S. sanctions. Led by Huawei, Chinese imports of chips all kinds climbed to almost 380 billion in 2020, making up almost a fifth of the country's overall imports for the year. Rivals, including Apple, worried about their own supply, responded in kind. At the same time, the stay-at-home era spurred sales of home appliances, from the costliest TVs to the lowliest air purifiers, all of which now come with smart, customized chips. TSMC executives said on its two most recent earnings calls that customers have been accumulating more inventory than normal to hedge against uncertainties, a maneuver they see persisting for some time. There is a chip stockpiling arms race right now, and this is something that is going to be very difficult for Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft to be able to compete with, because we're talking about Apple as an example. If you are in charge of creating these chips with limited components that you have access to then produce these chips, you're probably going to look at the biggest contracts that you can get and go from there. You're going to go from the top to the bottom, essentially. And we just talked about Sony trying to push out 14.5 million PlayStation 5 systems. That really can't compete with Apple when they show up and say, hey, we're going to be launching this new iPhone. We need a couple 100 million chips. Yeah, that's probably what you're going to take over the PS5, the Switch, or even the Xbox when their orders come in. They go on to say all that has dried up the spigot for smaller volume buyers, such as the makers of cars and gaming consoles. Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft have struggled to make enough Switches, PlayStations, and Xboxes for about a year. The game hardware industry is bracing for supply to get worse before it gets better in 2021, potentially even affecting the next holiday season, people familiar with the matter say. And they go on here to mention others argue chip makers are prioritizing higher volume and more lucrative consumer electronics such as smartphones. And that's just kind of the way it works right now with business. Obviously, you're trying to make money, so you're going to take the bigger contracts from an Apple, a Samsung, and any of these different companies that are coming to you for appliances that need these chips, down to cell phones and TVs. Yeah, those larger contracts are going to be something that you focus on there, whereas Nintendo, even if they wanted to produce 30 million Switch systems, isn't going to compete with that. Even if you added up all of the Xbox systems for the year that need to be produced, all of the Switch systems, all of the PlayStation 5s, all under one umbrella, still wouldn't come anywhere near competing with what Apple is trying to produce. And obviously, you're going to take that money if you're TSMC. Now, this isn't the first time one of these game companies kind of competed a bit with Apple. It appeared that in 2018, Nintendo was having an issue with the Switch and producing it, and a lot of it had to do with flash memory. And it appeared that Apple was also vying for similar supply, at least kind of drying all of that up. And apparently what happened is Nintendo managed to make a deal with one of the producers of the flash chips. It could have been a long-term deal. Who knows? Maybe they just signed on for 10 years or something with Nintendo for any of the consoles they produce. And at that time, they were able to secure enough flash chips, and then we see here seem to work fine, as they are now aiming to overtake the Wii with over 100 million Switch systems sold by maybe the end of this year, or at the very least it'll pass the Wii, we think, in the beginning or the first half of next year. But this is something a bit different, as this is going to be all of the different companies vying for what's going to already be a fairly small piece of the pie, with some of the really big companies around them taking up most of the share. To go on a bit further here, they mentioned that it's anyone's guess when the production will catch up with demand, but they themselves are also saying probably starting in the second half of this year, we'll start to see at least catch up some. But as I said before, that's when you're going to see the majority of Switch systems, PS5s, or Xboxes be produced as we go into the holidays, when the hype will be at an all-time high and demand will look to be going up, going into like Christmas and holidays and all of this. So unfortunately, I'm looking at this saying 2021 again is going to be tough when it comes to finding these different systems. We could even go into the first half of 2022 and like we're still trying to find a PS5 at retail. Now, it's one thing if you can't find a system because people are actually going to the stores and buying them legitimately. It's another if a bot is crashing a website and buying 10 or 20 of these systems at once. That's the most frustrating part for people. Well, it does look like, at least in the UK, they are continuing to discuss and push forward the idea of it being illegal to scalp these different game consoles. And I'm really curious how people feel about this one, with the government technically getting involved in a way that could maybe spill over into other parts of gaming here when it comes to reselling. But we can see here MP proposes bill to make console scalping illegal amid PS5 and Xbox Series shortages. Now, they say Sky News reports the bill is titled the Gaming Hardware Automated Purchase and Resale Bill 2019-21 and would operate in a similar fashion to a ban on ticket touting implemented a few years ago. Now, the idea here seems to be them just trying to push the idea that there needs to be some responsibility for what's happening right now with these different systems and them being ripped away from retail stores or online e-commerce sites and then resold. They don't even seem that confident that this will actually become a bill, because my question, I guess, for this is where exactly are like the clear guidelines for this? So we're talking about the PS5 and the Series X and the S. Okay, if that's bought with a bot, that makes sense. But what if someone legitimately gets through and is able to get 3 of these systems, and maybe they don't need all 3, maybe they just need 2 of them, and they're like, well, I have this other one, I might as well recoup some of my losses, and then you go and you just sell it for like $200 over its asking price because someone is legitimately willing to pay that much, like whether it's on Craigslist or wherever. So that's the interesting part there, is how would they enforce that exactly? Because the idea here is that it wouldn't be above retail asking price. So the $500, just say that for a PS5, you can't charge above that at all. And then does that extend to used games, or games that become rare over time because they are discontinued? Or does it have to be things that are still in stock and things that are not considered legacy? That's my issue there, because there is an entire market right now around retro games. I assume it wouldn't go that far, but who knows with this, right? So I believe this would stick to mostly newer systems that are just being introduced and are being picked up by automated bots. But it's something I kind of thought about there. It's like, how far would you really want the government to go when it comes to this stuff? Because I think most of us are just frustrated with the bots, not necessarily somebody who buys 2 of these systems or something and realizes they don't need both of them. But let me know what you guys think about this situation down below. Just a quick update on what's going on currently kind of in the background for these systems and when we could see the PS5 actually show up in retail stores. Again, probably not till the first half of 2022. At least that's my estimation now, despite what AMD and even Microsoft have said so far. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.